مرحبا فيكم في حلقة جديدة في برنامج برو تايم، وفخورين إن نستضيف معانا واحدة من الماركات اللي احنا نعتز فيها، شركة زايتفينكل. هي من الشركات الرائدة المستقلة في سويسرا، وراح نستضيف أخ عزيز اللي هو مؤسس لشركة زايتوينكل، الأخ ألبرت إيدلمان. وبإذن الله راح نروح في رحلة طويلة مع الشركة وشلون تأسست الشركة وساعاتها اللي هم اشتغلوا عليها. Welcome Albert to our lounge at 1010 Labs. It's indeed a pleasure to have you here, and we are very happy to have you with our show at Brew Time.
Thank you very much for having me here in Bahrain. It's great to be here.
So let us know more about Zeitwinkel. When did the company set up? A bit of a background about you, the three of you as founders. Would love to know more how you set up the company and how all three of you, being veterans in the watch industry, came together and set up this interesting company with really lavish timepieces.
Thank you. Zeitwinkel was founded in 2006 by a group of three friends. Peter, who was in the watch industry already, Max, who's a professor for design and marketing, and myself, who came more from the business side of things. And we decided to start a watch company that, as we decided at the time, that makes honest watches. So the unusual step we took for 2006, 2007 was to start by developing our own movement.
That's the interesting part. When watchmakers or independent watchmakers start, the first thing they do is design the watches. But you took another route where you actually invested in designing your own in-house movements first. So, we would love to understand more what drove you to go to the movements first and then basically develop the dial and the cases, and so that's an interesting perspective.
Absolutely. We did not know what the watches would look like even well into the movement development, although we obviously put some of the characteristics already in the movements. The reason was that we felt the value proposition of many of the watches that were sold in the market did not really correspond with the pricing, and we wanted to show that with an honest watch with a very good hand-assembled movement by using traditional manufacturing methods, you can build a watch and still have a position as an independent watchmaker.
Coming back to the name Zeitwinkel, is there a meaning behind the name? Would love to understand why the name was chosen, and is there a deep meaning behind the name?
Yes, Zeitwinkel is German for time angle, and it denotes the angle at any given point on Earth, and it thus describes the actual time at that point in the geography rather than a whole time zone. And we all live in a specific place, or we all are in a specific place and not in a zone. So we felt that is an interesting technical name. It does sound very Germanic, and obviously many people have problems pronouncing it, but we felt that was a good correspondence to the technical approach we took to making our movements first and then looking at design.
Excellent. And the company, of course, is based in Switzerland, so it's a Swiss company with Germanic roots. So where exactly in Switzerland is the company based? If you can take us through, where the company is based and the atelier and the details of the atelier.
Yes, when we started out with the movement development, we obviously also had to find a home for Zeitwinkel, and we looked in many different places, decided fairly early on that we did not want a flashy facade and representative headquarters, but rather wanted to go where it smells of oil and traditional watchmaking. And we found a former dial factory in a little town called Saint-Imier in the French-speaking part of the Bernese Jura, the mountain range between Biel and La Chaux-de-Fonds, which has a lot of tradition in watchmaking. Quite a few famous brands have been and are still in Saint-Imier. And we found this old building that had a lot of tradition in watchmaking and set up shop there. And we're still there today. We love it a lot. It's a wonderful place.
The time when you launched your first timepieces, you focused on two models, the 188 and the 273.
Yes.
They come in two sizes, and the 39 mm and 42.5 mm. And that was based on your first movement that you developed. So, would love to know more about the timepieces. Again, I fully understand, the beauty of the name Zeitwinkel, i.e. the angles of time. So you've also based the watches, even in naming the watches, so the 188 degrees to 273 degrees. So there is a correlation between even naming the watches and the brand.
Yes, this is the first movement we developed, our movement caliber 102 with 72 hours of power reserve, untreated German silver for plates and bridges, either in a central second configuration or decentral second configuration. And the still today fairly rare feature of a automatic winding mechanism. And we based our watches with 2 and 3 hands on this movement. In parallel, we developed a second movement with a patented large date mechanism at the fairly unusual 11 position with a large date, a power reserve indication, and a decentral second display. And by the time we were ready to design our watches, everything fell into place. It was fairly clean design that resulted from the design of the movements. We always stood and still stand for a classic yet modern approach to the classic design of watches, reminiscent of old pocket watches.
Coming back to value proposition, and I believe this is a core essence in the watches that you produce. Now, a lot of watchmakers usually utilize base movements and then modify them. But the value proposition today that Zeitwinkel brings to collectors is that the movement is completely in-house and you do not have a base. Actually, everything was developed from scratch as an in-house movement, and that's a solid value proposition that you provide in your timepieces today. So, I mean, this is something that we don't, really independent watchmakers actually offer. And this is a value proposition that you do.
Yes, and that's something that you usually don't see if you see our watches, because they look very clean, and only when you turn them over you see the movement. And in those movements that you only find in our Zeitwinkel timepieces, every little component is worked on by our own watchmakers in our own atelier. They set stones, they build the groups, the components in the atelier. They build pinions from components that are either made by us or made for us by partners that are all within a few dozen kilometers of Saint-Imier. So the way we work, even though it is a serial watch that you can buy again if you want a second one, is made from scratch in very traditional methods. And we use traditional machines where we produce or work on components.
So as we understand that today the movement has elements that you have patented. We'd love to know what those elements are in terms of patent and what makes it different, and what got patented in terms of the mechanism and the movements.
So we do indeed have a patent for the large date mechanism, for the way the date changes. But we have a lot of other aspects in our movements that are optimized and that were specified by us when we developed the movement. Apart from the maybe unusual three-quarter bridge that you don't find a lot in Swiss movements, we use untreated German silver, which obviously looks very nice, but is also very sturdy, very robust, and which is not very forgiving when you make mistakes in decoration. So our watchmakers have to be extremely diligent and very good in decorating, in handling, in preparing these components, because every mistake will be visible. They cannot hide it by covering it. And if you look at our bidirectional automatic winding mechanism, that is very strong. It will wind the watch in both directions immediately once the rotor weight starts moving, and that is a feature that is highly appreciated by many customers.
Oh, coming back to your models, so we have two models, the 188 and the 273. Let's focus more initially on the 188. Would love to understand why you set up both actually models in 39 and 42.5, and what are the futures? So what are the main futures of the 188 to clients and collectors as an offering?
Yes, the 188 in 39 millimeter and the 181 in 42.5 millimeters essentially transport the same design in different sizes, but they are both very harmonious, and both come with or without a date, if you wish to have a date function, and they have a decentral seconds display that is quite large. So if you have a smaller movement, the decentral seconds float in space somewhere, but the design we wanted to achieve for our watches is to have a large, small date, contradiction in itself, obviously, that reminds of pocket watches. The design is very clean. It's just with a little twist in the galvanic surface of the dials. But when you turn it around, as in all of our watches, you have this beautiful movement with the German silver, with everything decorated, also the parts that you don't see. Yeah. And that is, I think, one of the strongest points in our value proposition, apart from the way we make them. We do not take shortcuts. It would be very easy not to do something that you don't see, but that is not the way we make watches. And correct. That, I am happy to say, even after 16, 17 years, goes on as we fulfill the promise we gave to ourselves, build honest watches. And as you are still dealing with the founders, with Peter, Max, and me, when you deal with Zeitwinkel, we have to stand behind it. And this is one of the results, the watches with our decentral seconds.
And one of the features that you also offer to clients is it comes in the basic models in white, blue, in terms of galvanic finish on the dials, but you also provide bespoke dial colors to clients that could be using the galvanic finish, or even grained or different grained finishes, or even different finishes on your timepieces.
Yes, and as you know, in partnership with 1010 Labs, we like to offer bespoke pieces, a very small series of bespoke dial versions, and as long as we are able to make it, and as long as you are a little patient, we are very much willing to discuss making a bespoke watch for our customers.
So on the 273, I think the main feature is the big date. On the 273, does it also come into basic versions? Of course, it all comes in 42.5, so the 273, given the movement, cannot be sized down. It is a 42.5. Does it also come in different dial schemes, and can clients order bespoke dials on the 273?
Yes, the 273 degrees has a dial layout that does not lend itself to a 39 millimeter configuration, but it wears very nicely even on a thin wrist like mine, and it comes in various colors, in galvanic silver, galvanic black and galvanic blue. We're planning for more colors, so yes, we will be able to do bespoke colors soon. And the probably most well-known watch by Zeitwinkel nowadays is the sapphire dial, which we do in this beautiful smoked sapphire that appears anything from dark gray solid to nearly fully transparent, and where the colors, the warm glow of the German silver plates of the movement really radiate through the dial.
And that was actually my next question. You've upped up the level of offerings by utilizing a unique technology on the sapphire dials, which we'd love to hear more about. Where you've introduced two colors, one being the smoked version and the other one being the blue Lumet that you introduced. So we'd love to hear more about the technology that you use in basically developing these dials on the timepieces.
Both watches, the 273 Saphir Bleu and the 273 Saphir Fumé, have a sapphire dial that goes through a process where metallic crystals are in a plasma oven applied to the sapphire. And this process is not uncomplicated because you have to get a very homogeneous structure, and we have to achieve the color. So especially the blue color is quite difficult to achieve. But you're rewarded with a watch that changes appearance quite dramatically.
Every time light basically hits into the watch.
Every time light hits into the watch, it gets very transparent. You see the beautifully decorated front side of the movement. You see the, still interesting to me after so many years, large date mechanism at work. But the same watch can appear completely solid thanks to the process we use. It's not a lacquer, it's a plasma deposition process. And some other processes after metallization we use are also quite unusual in watchmaking. It is called Liga. It's a lithographic galvanic process where we grow the indices on the watch, where everything you see on the front of the watch, the logo, the frame around the large date, the power reserve, scale, in layman's terms, are grown onto the sapphire, with the result that you have a very, very clean, three-dimensional, beautiful watch that changes appearance basically every time you wear it.
And that is the true value proposition of owning Zeitwinkels. So the offering as a collector, I'd have something that's very unique, not easily produced, given the complexity of the technicalities that go into the watch. So that really makes it a value proposition on my wrist.
Yes, and we like to say you're not only buying a watch, you're buying a watchmaker's time, because a lot of energy and passion of one watchmaker goes into your watch. So the same watchmaker is working on the components, is preparing them, is assembling the movement, spends a lot of time optimizing everything, and sometimes puts a personal touch on some of the components, assembles the watch, tests it, and after quality inspection, you know you have a lot of lifetime, a lot of what that watchmaker has learned, a lot of experience, and a lot of passion in your watch.
And I believe the innovation that you also bring on board in developing the process, during the process, the innovation that comes in, especially with the fume, the sapphire, the movement. I think this is a huge value add to the timepiece that a collector would always look into by having it on his wrist.
Yes, we think it's a good crossing point between innovation, between modern twists, and at the same time you have a timepiece that can be repaired by a skilled watchmaker even 100 years down the line when we are all gone.
Yes. Going to our partnership, when we started at 1010 Labs with Zeitwinkel, this is what intrigued us to offer, is bringing that innovation and heritage of watchmaking to the market in the Middle East. That drove us to develop and introduce something related to our region. And this is where we did our first launch and our first edition, which was based on the 188, a 39 millimeter watch under the name Al Bakiran. Now, when we called it Al Bakiran, there was a rationale behind the name. We wanted to achieve a unique salmon Pantone and color. Salmon is very much, I would say, a flagship of 1010 Labs as an offering, as a color, and a color that is highly sought after in our region. And on a global level, salmon has a huge fan base, but here in the region, it's very close to our hearts. So we wanted to introduce something a bit unique, where we chose a color Pantone of the initial sunrise. Now, in this part of the world, given the deserts that we have and given the terrain of the Middle East region, when the sun starts to rise, we call it in Arabic al-bukur, at that time set. The sky reflects a unique salmon color, which we utilized in a Pantone in our timepiece, and we were able to develop a very unique, bespoke limited edition of 10 pieces. I would love to hear from you how the journey took you towards basically helping us develop this timepiece.
Thank you very much. We were intrigued by the idea, and we didn't even call it salmon at first because it's such a unique color. It's a dial color that stands out. If you wear that watch, you will be noticed, but you don't quite know what the watch is about. So it's not flashy, it's very classic, and the color is not loud, it's very warm. Just like you mentioned, the first glimpse of the sun, of the sunlight, without the sun actually being there. And we were intrigued by the idea, and it took us, as you know, quite some time to get the color just right and to get the surface of the watch just right, so it appears differently in different angles and different light conditions. And we were very happy to use our Zeitwinkel 102 caliber to power a watch that I think is very unique, and where both you and me know quite a few people would have liked to participate in,
Absolutely.
in having one. But that is also the concept of these very limited quantity
Correct.
series, that once we've decided to make a certain number, we are unfortunately not able to do it again.
And we even went to the extreme of further making it close to the region by having a grained effect to the color as well, which also brings in the sand of the region. This edition was one of the first watches where Zeitwinkel introduced, other than the galvanic, a grained version of the dial. And from there on, I believe other versions of the grained dial were introduced through the pumpkin offering that you also offered, which we offer today to clients on an order basis, as well as another color scheme that we developed for a special client with a unique blue color, so that basically we would enable our clientele and collectors to have something more or less in line with what we have developed, but still keeping it unique and bespoke to them.
Yes, we felt that the Al-Bakaran was an excellent starting point for this type of dial surface. And we are quite conservative in bringing out new dial colors and dial versions, because we want to be able to keep them for the duration. So yes, we are able to do other dial colors as well. And depending on what your customers would like to see, we can obviously discuss that.
As a next chapter to our offerings, Albert, after really keeping a high bar on the Bakaran, we decided to develop 2 additional projects in the pipeline. One being a boutique edition, and we wanted to capitalize on the Fumet, which is a flagship model with Zeitwinkel. So we decided to have the offering. We already went public with this. So it's a boutique edition which will enable our collectors to order those pieces on an ongoing basis with a limited production on an annual basis. So we utilized the same Fumet sapphire dial, the smoked Fumet, but added a bit of a twist. The interesting twist to the edition was, once we started together, we understood that you have proprietary numerals in terms of fonts, and you've already used those fonts in one of your offerings, which is the animal version that you developed. We added the twist of adding Hindu Arabic numerals to those unique fonts that are proprietary to you, and we basically added them to this edition. So I would love to, hear more about the uniqueness of those fonts and how we basically incorporated them in this edition that we're offering to our clients.
Yeah. Our model 273 degrees Saphir Fumet has become a flagship, very recognizable watch for Zeitwinkel, and we are thus very hesitant to change anything because it's becoming more and more well known. Keep in mind, we make a very limited number of watches, so we usually don't change anything on this watch, also because of the complicated process. And we're very happy that we're able to do this now exclusively for 1010 Labs in a version that is a twist on our Zeitwinkel typeface, on the font we developed even before the watches were developed, in parallel to the movements, where every single letter and every single numeral is unique and is the basis for our Zeitwinkel logo, but also something we love to use in our date displays, in our communication. And what we did in cooperation with 1010 Labs was put a modern Zeitwinkel twist on Hindu Arabic numerals. So what you will find is, in a not limited but very, very exclusive edition, Zeitwinkel Hindu Arabic numerals on this beautiful sapphire dial. We were blown away. We really, really loved how it turned out, and I'm sure that you will have difficulties getting enough of them for your customers, because we just cannot make them fast enough. It's I think one of the few modifications we will do on this specific dial that we can stand behind, and we're very happy to do this exclusively, worldwide exclusively, through 1010 Labs.
Definitely, we are interested. We can't wait until we get the timepieces. Hopefully we are awaiting them within the next 2 to 3 months, so looking forward to having them on the wrists of our collectors. On another note, we are working on another unique project based similarly to the Baccarans, the 188, 39 mm, but we are developing something also unique in terms of what will be on the dial, which would be something that we'll be offering hopefully by the end of this year. We don't want to give too much light to it, but if you allow me just to give a bit of a hint, is that we might be using unique techniques in offering either a lacquer or a three-dimensional design to the dial that is also very close to the region, something inspired by the region here.
Yes, and that is something I also don't want to give away too much, but where we really enjoy how 1010 Labs brings the added value to watchmaking, where they, and you, Khaled, where they incorporate features that take the watches to a different segment, to a different level. It's something we're very, very much looking forward to. It will be based on this model, and I will not say anything for now, but let's just say it will be quite unique, it will be beautiful, and it also will be customizable to a certain extent. And last but not least, it will be exclusively available through 1010 Labs.
Being an independent watch brand, you produce around 100 watches a year. And you know, a lot of our clients and collectors say that's, you know, that's a small amount. We want to have more watches in place. Demand is increasing for you on a global side. We're having a hard time getting enough watches, again, for our clients due to your production of around 100 watches. Is there a reason why you are currently producing such limited numbers? Do you want to expand? Do you want to grow? Or do you believe as an independent watchmaker you would always want to stay around that limited production to basically provide that value to clients? Because as we know, a lot of independent watchmakers don't want to grow significantly to keep the value of the value proposition in their watches. So, you know, we'd love to have more insight, Albert, on the overall strategy of Zeitwinkel.
The founders worked very hard to build Zeitwinkel, and we're very, very much involved in making it continuously successful. So, of course, we would like to build more watches, grow very slowly, but we don't want to make any compromises. So we apologize to everybody who wants a Zeitwinkel watch. And at the moment, unfortunately, it takes quite a while to get a Zeitwinkel watch. But we don't want to compromise on the quality. And the same way we choose very carefully which components we use, which partners we work with, the same way we choose our watchmakers. And it is very difficult to get skilled watchmakers that can still work in the old-fashioned way, that can actually work on a component. You will never see large quantities of Zeitwinkel watches. They will also always be, unfortunately, exclusive in a sense that we make as many movements as we can in the given time, but we will not compromise on quality. So you will not see shortcuts, and that is the reason why we'd rather not build a watch than to build it in a way where we cannot stand behind it as a founder. Hopefully, we will be able to slowly, patiently increase the number of watches we make, but never at the cost of changing anything about the quality.
And that's the core element of the offering that you bring.
Yes.
And a differentiating factor that you bring to the table when collectors would want to have a Zeitwinkel.
We will, that's a promise I want to make. Everybody can buy a Zeitwinkel. We're not excluding anybody. That's not how we understand exclusivity. The exclusivity, unfortunately, exists because we can only make a small number of movements by hand, a small number of watches by hand every year.
Thank you very much, Albert, for your time, and it was a pleasure hosting you here at 1010 Labs. And we're looking forward to hosting you in our future events with our collectors and showcasing our offerings very soon. So we're looking forward to the Black Stealth version of the Fumet that we'll be introducing very soon to our clients, and our next limited edition. Our clients can order any of the normal lines, and we promise, as you said, we will promise every client to get a Zeitwinkel, but you have to be patient with us in terms of the production time frame, but we will get a Zeitwinkel watch on your wrist. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting you again soon.
Thank you very much, Khaled, and thank you very much, 1010 Labs, for having us here. And we're looking forward to coming back to the region.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.